Good afternoon. It is Tuesday on a date in May, and it is 3:31, calling the briefing meeting to order. We have several items on the agenda, as you can see from the agenda. I want to start by asking if there are any matters for good of the order. Anyone? No. Okay, we'll get started right away with the accreditation update with Dr. Creel, Dr. Bohatch, and Mr. Bradley, or not. I was looking at the wrong thing. Dr. Carlin and Ms. McClung. Thank you.
Much. All righty. Good afternoon, board members, Dr. Atkins and Mr. Bierman. Cindy and I are very pleased to be here with you today to share some highlights from our district's accreditation report and to share with you our district's high-level plan for moving forward in accordance with the feedback received on the report. As you may recall, we had a site visit in February. And that site visit was comprised of 18 members from a visiting team from Advanced Ed coming to our organization. They visited 19 of our schools. And then they also had the opportunity to visit 2 of our other centers, the Early Childhood Learning Center and the virtual school. And we had close to 700 of our team members and parents and other stakeholders interviewed. So you can take a look at that. You'll also recall from reviewing the report that there were 3 categories, 31 standards, 3 categories that were reviewed relative to leadership, learning, and resource capacity. Within those areas, we received ratings in each one of those areas. So as you can see from the slide, this is a breakdown, and we're very proud to report that 29 out of 31 of the areas were meets expectation or higher. 2 areas were emerging, and we'll give you a little bit more information further on into our presentation today about those. Interestingly enough, Advanced Ed uses an index of education quality and overall holistic score that gives us a broad view on how we did overall with our accreditation. And if you take a look at the slides, you can see our score was 340.48 on a scale of 100 to 400. So that puts us into the green category, which is categorized as impact. And that also shows that we scored well above the 5-year average for all of the Advanced Ed Improvement Network organizations. So let's talk about where we came from 2014 until now. As we have shared with you previously, some of the standards changed from 2014 to 2019. So what we tried to do was create here a crosswalk, a bridge for you to take a look at the required actions from 2014 and the assessment of this 18-member team in 2019. So you'll see there were 3 required actions. We actually had a total of 5, but these were 3 relative to the school board at the time. We do want to note that this rating from 2019 indicates that we are meeting expectation, which is very important. We did also have a conversation with the team leader, Dr. Barker, and he indicated that he knew that there had been an election, so he understood that, and said that we are continuing certainly to put our work into play. So he understood, we just had an election in November, here we are in February, so his encouragement was for us to continue to review our protocols, and he was very proud of the work that had been done on the protocols. That was not in place when the last time that they came to our district, or it was pretty immature in its implementation, and we had 5 years under our belt, and he was very proud of the fact that we had a very robust protocol manual, so that was a good thing. The other 2 areas from 2014 that we want to talk about. Last time we had a required action relative to the availability of our student support services. And this time, in 2019, the 2 standards that are aligned are on the screen, and both of those were a meets expectation. So last time where that was an opportunity, a huge opportunity, categorized as a required action, this time it met expectations, so that was really good news. And then the last area, the 5th area that was a required action in 2014, had to do with our assessment of student learning, instruction, and the effectiveness of our programs. This time in 2019, there were 2 areas, 2 standards that we were assessed on. One was meeting expectation, and the second having to do with assessing our programs was categorized as emerging. So that is still an opportunity for us to work on as a district. When we look at program evaluation, we acknowledge that. We know that that has been an area for us. We will continue to work on that implementation as well. So at this time, what I'm going to do is turn it over to Cindy, who's going to walk you through the next portion of our presentation, start talking with you a little bit about our actions moving forward as a result of the report.
Thank you and good afternoon. As you know, the purpose of this external evaluation was to provide us with some feedback. So we feel like we have a pretty good hold on what we do well and where we need opportunities for improvement, but it's always nice to have that external eye taking a look at that. So some of the strengths that they identified were the focus on the development of strong leaders. They were particularly impressed with the changes that have been made over the past 5 years in terms of the opportunities that were available to the teachers and with the career ladder, and also the changes that have been made in the principal and the assistant principal training and the pools that are in place there. They also were impressed with the focus on future growth and development, specifically Vision 2020, and now the long-term move into Envision 2030. They particularly mentioned the operational level of this building and how well we were putting processes into place, and particularly the Six Sigma model. They also specifically mentioned that we have a very effective strategic plan, that we formed that through broad representation from the community and from membership of our district, and that they heard about it in a lot of places, in schools as well as within the district office. Some of the opportunities that they pinpointed were that when they walked through our classrooms, they had 20-minute visits in the classroom. So remember, this is a very brief visit as they're going in, but they said we would really like to see a lot more creative, collaborative types of instruction going on. They also wanted to see more technology use. Again, they said we saw a lot more than last time. We were impressed with the increase, but it's still an area that they would like to see a little more in-depth use of technology rather than just replacement use of technology. And we had already talked about that increasing to a more systematic method of assessing programs and materials. They said they saw more of that at the district level, but they would like to see more as looking at data across schools to see what are the most effective programs and the materials that are being used, and then again increasing differentiation of instruction. I'm sure you've heard of our e-learning walks that take place with our academic services team. They use an instrument that is very similar to the instrument that was used by the Advanced Ed Accreditation. In fact, some of the language is exactly the same. What we found when we looked at the results of the Elliott tool used by Advanced Ed and the e-learning walks used by our academic team is that they were very similar. And I have to tell you, to me, that was a good thing, because the thing I was most worried about was that they would find something we weren't aware of. The good news is we are already addressing many of the things that they talked about. When you looked through there, you saw that there was a high correlation between the highest areas that Advanced Ed found and the highest areas that we found in our e-learning walks. Same thing in the lower areas. They were looking for that high level thinking, and we know that that's an area that we're still providing instruction in the depth of knowledge, particularly in areas 3 and 4 within our schools. Also, differentiated instruction. We have a lot of opportunities to take the data that we have and develop additional strategies for individualization at the school level, and that is certainly being addressed. One of the things that we were proud of, but at the same time looking at a little sideways, was when we looked at the digital learning environment. It was one of our lowest ratings. But then when we compared it to the average of all of the districts that they had reviewed, we were actually well above that average. So again, we know that we want to work to increase the way our technology is being used with our students, but we're really doing a lot better than most places are. So they were happy to see that as well. And that moved out, excuse me, that moved up as compared to last time. Thank you. So what are we going to do about it? Excuse me. At the district level, we plan to continue and refine Envision 2030. We have action plans that are ongoing around that, and we will continue to work on those. In fact, one of our leadership days this summer will be devoted to department improvement plans. The same thing with effective operational processes. We are always looking at those processes, looking for ways to refine them, taking in all the data that we can find, whether it's from audits, whether it's from day-to-day observations of staff, and improving those processes, because we know that improved processes give us improved results. And along those lines, continue our Lean Six Sigma training. About 70% of our administrators have been through at least 6 hours of that. We currently have 6 people that are finishing up a green belt project, and we have 4 of us who have just begun a black belt project, and we're really excited about that. We also received some feedback about our disaster contingency plan. We feel like we did a pretty good job after Irma, but there's always room for improvement, and of course that is being looked at, and so we'll look a little bit more closely at that and make sure that we have the best plan in place as possible. And then again, looking at how can we really deploy that systematic method of evaluating programs and materials, and going a little more in depth in that area. We have plans at the school level for supporting those strengths and opportunities mostly through our academic services team. So they have had a very big emphasis on the ABCs over the past couple of years: attendance, behavior, and classroom results. You know about the curriculum maps and the instructional guides, and they're going to continue refining that and working upon that. Same thing with professional development. We want to make sure that all of our teachers, from the very first new ones walking in the door to our very seasoned teachers, have the best possible professional development to make sure that they're providing the best strategies for individualization for students. Here's the new framework that's just being debuted by our team over here, Academic Services team. And when we say framework, it really is a frame there. And we're looking at educating the whole child for a well-rounded education. And you'll notice it uses those same 4 PLC questions that we've been using for several years now, just refining the framework around that so that we see how interconnected attendance, behavior, and classroom success are with those questions, and how all of those work together to form a culture of success within our schools. They also have a plan in place to provide ongoing support to teachers, starting with their district content team, which provides support and training, professional development to those school teams, who then develop that all the way through down to the classroom level. It resulted in a 5-year accreditation from Advanced Ed, also a 5-year accreditation for our early learning team. They had wonderful things to say. The team was very impressed with what they saw. The virtual school, we are still waiting on some specific feedback, but they did tell us that they felt like it was a model of technology strategies there, that they felt they were doing just a wonderful job. So we're looking forward to having a little more specific feedback around that. Do you have any questions for us today?
Board members, questions or comments?
I have one.
Ms. Gittens?
So what is the process then, as far as, excuse me, Cindy, you gave it to me. Jeez. The next steps in the process as to looking at our deficiencies and improving them?
Well, this is being shared with leadership at both the district level, and it will also be shared with principals so they can see where we're going. These steps back here in terms of looking at, go back to the district level. We'll be looking at that disaster contingency plan at the district level, and also at how we're going to move forward in getting a more consistent way of evaluating. So we'll develop a team around that. And then at the school level, the support is basically coming through that professional development and making sure that teachers have the support that they need in order to make sure students are getting that individualized attention, and that they also have the support they need to develop those lesson plans that are more creative and collaborative.
And we have this information as a whole right now, but it's drilled down to the schools
Yes.
individually, that they can work on their areas as well.
Yes, and a lot of this will take place through the leadership training this summer, starting in June, so that information will be shared and the training will be specific to that. And then we also have an ongoing process called our CSI Lee process, which encourages schools to do a self-evaluation very similar to this one, based upon the Sterling criteria. And then we have a team from within our district who goes through the school and does a very similar style of review so that they keep in the habit. When you do something once every 5 years, you tend to forget. So we keep that in the forefront so that people are always doing that self-evaluation and review.
Ms. Skittens, if I can add as well, one thing that's very important to us is the use of data. So we talked about the use of our ACT Points KPIs as we start to develop school improvement plans and department improvement plans. We use the formative data that schools have where they're monitoring how children are doing in terms of student achievement, and this will be another piece of information that we will add to that bucket of data, and then we continue to work on refining our department improvement plans and our school improvement plans. So thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? I'd like to say that the 340.48 out of 400 is incredibly good, and I hope, Dr. Adkins, that you take pride in that, as does your staff and every person that works for this district. That really is astonishingly good to me. I'd like to add the discussion about protocols not being in place for the board 5 years ago. I do have some concerns that our protocols that are in place are not being followed by this board, so I'm hopeful that when we have our board self-evaluation, that will be an area that we will be given time to discuss. I have to compliment you, Ms. McClung, because this was your baby in terms of the project itself, getting the accreditation done. You did a phenomenal job.
Thank you, but it definitely was teamwork.
I understand that it was teamwork, but you were the captain, and so I will give you the credit, and you can disperse that to your team. Dr. Creel, I think that the learning walks and the high level of achievement that we received in those areas is due in large part to the programs that you've brought to this district. And I know I've mentioned it publicly several times, but I think that the things that you've put in place will allow our students to continue to achieve and achieve at even higher levels as they become more commonplace in our schools. The digital learning comparison was very, very helpful, because when I read the report, I was like, how could we be behind technologically? Because I know that education in general tends to be very reactive when it comes to technology, and I believe that Mr. Davis has put us ahead of almost every other educational institution that I'm aware of. So that comparison was great for me to see where we do actually stand. And finally, our virtual schooling, I have heard compliments across the board from parents and students alike. Mathematics, for example, some students don't learn well in a classroom, but they take that one course online and it completely turns around their educational experience. So I think Lee Virtual School is doing a fantastic job of serving our students.
Yeah, we
Those are my
continue to
comments.
receive
Thank you very
that
much.
feedback as well from accreditation from Advanced Ed as well. Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
So board members, just a comment. I hope that people do appreciate the significance of this. I think oftentimes our wins get lost. This is a pretty substantial win, but because of the nature of education, a lot of people don't understand how big of a deal this is. These are professional educators who come in here and walk our buildings. These are people that have been around the country, have walked in many, many buildings, and to receive that type of rating from people who walk into school buildings and districts across this country and evaluate those districts, I think is something that we should take pride in. Our team, our teachers, our school-based administrators, and this central staff, I am proud of their efforts here and do give accommodation to Cindy and Denise for leading this effort. So thank you.
Excellent. Next on the agenda, we have the Student Code of Conduct for PK through 5 and 6 through 12. Dr. Creel, Dr. Bohatch, Mr. Bradley, and 3 of our rock star students. who I actually know their names, and I know nobody's name.
I'm going to introduce you.
Reese Hall, the mayor, and Wolfpack Will, right? Isn't that their names?
Not exactly, but sort of. Just gonna.
Okay, good afternoon, board members. Dr. Atkins, I'm here with Mr. Bradley and I tried to come up with a nickname for you guys, so I'm thinking the Dream Team. Familiar with the Dream Team? Well, last week we were in a meeting, they didn't know who Barney Fife was, so
That's wrong. I knew who Barney Fife was.
it was so cute. Reese went,
He did.
who Barney Fife is. And you don't know either, so, but you know. Okay, so I'm impressed with that. So. First up, we've got Reese Hall from Fort Myers High School, and what an impressive young lady. She's spitting out Supreme Court landmark cases at a meeting last week. I'm going, where is she coming from? So talking about TLO versus New Jersey, and she aspires to be a lawyer. So welcome and thank you. All right, next up we have Will Holderfield, the associate principal at South High. And Ms. Fisher, you need to be warned, he wants to be a teacher, and he wants to run for school board, and he resides in your district.
I know that already. We're working on it.
Where, and last but not least, we have Jesus Rodriguez from Ida Baker High School, and you want to be president.
I do.
You got my vote, son. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Mr. Bradley.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Bohatch, and members of the board. Dr. Atkins, we're pleased to bring to you today the revised version of the Code of Conduct for students for both pre-K 5 and grades 6-12. And then we also have an adult student code of conduct that Dr. Peel will speak to at the end of this presentation. But it is our privilege to bring this to you. We wanted to let you know that we have listened to the feedback, and we have presented to you a document today that is revised, cleaned up, and made much more coherent than it has been. Particularly, what we have done is we have taken the parent guide portions out of this document and left it as just a code of student conduct. We will be bringing back to you at another time the parent guide itself that will also be revised. And I'm going to save some thunder for Jesus because I know he's going to speak to some of the improvements that we've made in the document. But we are pleased to bring it to you today. It does match our branding and our formatting, and includes pictures of our own students and our own school district. So we're pleased to bring that to you today. And with that, our students are going to speak to some specific parts of the document and some of the new programs that are being put in place to address our students and our students' needs in the district. And we're going to start with Mr. Will Holderfield.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bradley. Hello, members of the board. I am back again, and I have some more information to bestow upon you. One of the biggest factors of the new student code of conduct for students is we're wanting to reintroduce level 3 behavior, disciplinary actions, and just overall range of ways to get those students back interactive with the school after they've committed those disciplinary their disciplinary action. So we have came up at the last student advisory committee meeting. With Dr. Bohatch, we talked about how one of our schools has a drug alcohol prevention course that they require students to take in the classroom after they've been caught vaping, using a Juul or any type of tobacco products on campus. And these wonderful gentlemen have came up with a new plan for that to kind of help those students get back on the ball and not discipline them so they will continue to do it and resent us, but more in a way that they will be able to learn from their mistakes and so that they can continue on successfully. And that is a prevention center from the school for the school system in the school district that's varies on the days for the students. So if they commit a level 3 action and they have been found with a vape on their campus, and the principal decides with his discretion that he wants to take the student to the prevention center. They'll go through that. They'll go through a few testing. They'll still be enrolled in their home school, so they'll still have that function of being in the, for instance, Ida Baker, South Fort Myers. They'll still be able to be in that school. They'll just be at a prevention center learning of what their mistake was, how we can help them to prevent that from further occurring, and then so that they can be still an active, involved student, because everyone makes mistakes. We're just trying to present to them that you made a mistake, we're here to fix that mistake and put you back on that right track. So they'll go through a steady course of Google Classroom from their home school, take work through that, and then they'll learn about what the problems they have encountered, how it affects their bodies, and then what they can do to curve that, and then they'll be reintroduced to their school. And if they continue through that, then they'll go through a more further process.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Holderfield. And our next piece that we'd like to talk about is educating students on their rights. And so our attorney, Ms. Reese, is going to talk about that.
Okay, so, yeah, thank you. Oh, might want to turn that.
Show the red dots on. There you go.
Okay. So anyways, so yeah, thank you. So one thing that I've noticed, especially in my school, and I also do this program called Teen Court lately, as Will just spoke to, our drug education thing. It's been in a trend in Lee County schools lately. We have kids getting caught with jewels and dab pens all the time, and a lot of times these come from searches, whether or not it's their person or their car. And sometimes in teen court, when I act as a defense attorney, I'll have kids that say, well, I learned in my government class at Lee County schools that according to the First Amendment, they need a search warrant to search me or my locker or my car. What they don't often get told is that according to New Jersey versus TLO and our board's own policy, an administrator has the right to search a car or a locker or any part of the student or their property that's on student campus with just reasonable suspicion. So they don't need a warrant or even probable cause. And if you were to look in our code of conduct until this year, that would be nowhere to be found. So it's not necessarily about like encouraging students to like hide their jewels or whatever in their house, but ruling after ruling from the Supreme Court and our government has shown us that students do have a right to be aware of what their rights are. And by adding this section to the Code of Conduct, I think that we're accomplishing that and wiping away any confusion on what rights are and what the Fourth Amendment really means for students in a school.
All right, thank you. And the president is going to speak to the overall improvements and reactions from our students.
All right, good afternoon, board members, superintendent. So I just want to welcome you guys to the 21st century. This is a code of conduct that really is really valuable to us in the school district, of course. But a lot of times it gets really complicated. People don't want to read it. I mean, last time I read it, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I read it was like third grade was the last time I read this. But I mean, parents do read them.
Read it as a third grader.
Yeah. But other than that, I mean, it was a good start to the 21st century. We really wanted to do something that would make it easier for the parents and things like that, of course, for the board members. So we kind of really started with the emergency forms. A lot of the teachers have to turn that in at the beginning of the year. They kind of have to turn that in also to their information specialist, to the district as well. So it kind of gets a huge mess and stuff like that. So I just want to share a quick little story with you. I had to organize all those papers that teachers brought in from the beginning of the school year, means the contact forms, the emergency forms, all those things. I had to put in alphabetical order, each of them. I have 1,000-something kids at Ida Baker, so it was a huge pile. And of course, then you get the teachers that kind of lose them and go, well, we got to start all over again because you have to turn those in for the school district. So I sat there for months and months and months and trying to figure out how to organize all these things and put it all together and make sure that the school district has them on time as a certain requirement. So we decided to come up with Mr. Bradley and I, of course, Dr. Bohatch, to do the emergency forms online. There will be some sort of form that we can do, kind of make it make it better, not only for the parents, but for the teachers, for the staff, and things like that. So that's a little bit more understandable of a code of conduct as well. So we added some hyperlinks to it. So some of the main parts, you have a little hyperlink you can click on, and it'll bring you to that important information that you really need to know. I mean, the whole thing is important as well, but then you got some parents who don't want to read the whole thing, or some students that don't want to read the whole thing. So you kind of go on the hyperlink, they can kind of show you where to go. Other than that, it kind of revises everything, and of course we got all the dress code, the disciplinary actions, things like that. Will kind of make it better for not just for staff, but also for parents and things like that. So that was our main overview, our main course that we wanted to do this year with the code of conduct. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll open it up for any questions.
Ms. Gittens?
My first one is, you're all seniors, correct?
No, Reese is not.
I'm not, I'm a
Okay.
junior.
Yeah, me and Will are
Okay,
seniors.
good. Because my question is, who are you training to take your spot when you graduate? That will be a definite thing we will need, so continuity. But great job, guys. You really, what kind of support do you get from the students at your school for what you're doing?
Well, you guys look at me. We actually get a lot of support. A lot of students really come to us for a lot of questions, things like that. It's not that they're not scared of going to their counselors or administrations or things like that. It's just better to have a one-on-one student perspective with each other. A lot of kids, if they're having issues and things, they'll come up to another kid and say, hey, can you help me out with this? Can you do this for me? And of course, we'll all be willing to help one another. But I think it's a great opportunity to just not only serve as our representatives of the school, but also to kind of get input from every one of the kids. And, some kids don't really, care less about school, but you can always change those opinions and say, hey, if you do this or, have the opportunity to volunteer somewhere, that could change someone's life right there.
And I want to also reiterate that with Jesus, that earlier in this year, we had the foundation where we have students from all over the school district come in and kind of talk from each grade level. And I haven't done that the past few years because I didn't know about it, but I was glad that I got to fill in this year for my final year, because I got to hear different opinions from other than our board representatives from the student population. I got to hear regular students that, like most of our students, are IB students or AP students, but they do interact with the student body. But I got to hear those students that don't usually get to talk to those kids. And it was really interesting to hear what they say. They told me that one of the advisors told me at the meeting, if you had somebody like Will or this person, would you be more open to talk to them about your problems at the school level? And they were like, yeah, kind of. And I was like, well, I got a kind of out of that. That's pretty cool. But it just shows that if you're willing to take a second out of your day as a student or as any person and able to get them to open up to you at all, then you're making an impact that you're showing that will help the community. And it's awesome to see some students that would never talk to someone talk to them. And that's why I love what I get to kind of go do and speak to you guys every month, because I'm like, well, I was told something that they wouldn't tell their counselor, that now I can help reiterate to the school board to help try to get fixed. And I just find that to be an amazing thing we get to do. And it really, I think, helped change the impact of the student code of conduct book for the next following students that are entering our school system, since we're expanding even greater numbers than we have in recent years. But I just want to reiterate with Jesus that it is awesome that we get to do this, and I thank everyone for letting us do this.
You have to be patient and just listen to them. That's the key.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with what both of them said. It's a great opportunity to be able to represent the students from my school. I am an IB student, so I feel like I'm able to bring that perspective of students that are stressed all the time and taking the maximum course load and maybe don't have that much time to read the code of conduct. And then I've also been able to work a lot with the SGA students at my school. school. My alternate, I don't know if you guys know Emery, he's pretty great. He's in traditional, so we work together a lot to try to bridge those two perspectives at our school, because sometimes Fort Myers, it's kind of sad, but it can be like two different schools, especially when you're a junior or a senior. So I think it's been really great. We've been able to bridge that gap, and also working with teachers, like my legal systems teacher and my global politics teacher. I've told both of them that I'm the representative, and that if they ever have students that have any specific questions or issues with the school board, they can always talk to me. So just things like that.
Yeah.
Great. Ms. Jordan?
Well, first, I would just like to say thank you very much for what you do. Really appreciate that. And I have a grandson at Fort Myers High, so yes, I definitely appreciate it. But my question is, Will, the prevention centers, all these ideas are wonderful. Where do you see that at, when you're saying a prevention center for
I could-
these students to go?
I can speak to that. Dr. Creel and I are going to make a road trip next week. We're going to visit Fort Myers Tech. Did I say that right? Is it Fort Myers Technical College? And the police academy. They've got a couple classrooms there. The FMIT has an empty wing. Feeding the students could be a challenge, but I think we probably could work that out. So we're bouncing ideas around, but we have those two sites.
Okay, and then,
So can I just?
Yes, please.
Provide a little bit more information to that? So the prevention center would be a 20-day location that the students would be assigned to. It would allow the students to, as Will mentioned, that they would continue with their instruction that they're taking from school. For example, our Edgenuity, which is an online program, is aligned with our scope and sequence. And our students would take a pretest when they go into the prevention center, showing where they're at in their learning, and knowing that from the scope and sequence that they would not exceed where the students, when they would go back, because you're going to have students coming in on a 20-day rotation constantly. So we would not want the students to exceed where other students would get through an electronic classroom. They also would have access to their Google Classrooms as well, so that teachers would be able to assign things that they would be doing from their regular classroom. But the intent of it is to have not only the opportunity to step away, to have the counseling. We would work with the Hanley Foundation to provide some on-site counseling with these students. Also having the opportunity to have community members such as yourself and others to come in and be able to have one-on-one conversations or group conversations with these young people, letting them know. One of the things that we have found this year, particularly with the juuling and the vaping, is that many of our students and a large number of our parents do not realize that this is a felony charge. And so trying to make an awareness while we are trying to also do a prevention around how our students would move forward. So as Dr. Bohatch was saying, the two locations that we're looking at, it would not have our students directly affiliated with the Success Academy. It would reduce the numbers of students that are at the Success Academy, having a focused area for the students that are just being pulled away for these offenses that we can work with from a counseling standpoint. And it would allow us to be able to meet those individualized needs, while at the same time the transportation, for example, the Fort Myers Technical College is right there at Success Academy, so you wouldn't have to have additional transportation, as well as the Police Academy. The Safety Academy is just a half a mile down the road. So we're not looking at additional expenses. One of the other pieces of this that I think Dr. Bohatch has done a great job is, as we are pulling students away from the Success Academy, it's using the same DRAs from a teacher standpoint and a paraprofessional standpoint. So we're not looking at adding dollars. We're just looking at separating the students that are being served.
Okay, and I'm sorry, you said the jewels is a felony. It depends on what's inside the jewel.
Correct.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to clarify that.
Right.
Thank you. And then my second question is to Reese.
Yes.
With the educating the students of their rights and the signing of the code of conduct, don't you sign that in the beginning of the year?
Yeah, okay.
Because this made me know that, because I know you're, either one of you.
So yeah, you do sign the code of conduct at the beginning of the year. Where I was mainly focused on my concerns and the concerns of the students that I talked to were the fact that our legal rights with regards to search and seizure specifically of persons, lockers, and cars, those were never actually outlined in the code of conduct. So it never actually said anything to that effect. And with like the high volume of students that I've seen be searched and come to me with questions like, they can't do this, can they? And I'll be like, yeah, they can. I thought that it was very important, since it is a document that you do sign and that we expect every student to read, this was a great place to notify students of that right, just so that there was no confusion.
Okay, thank you, because I believe it used to be in there that they could search. So that's why I was kind of a little bit concerned on that. Thank you.
Ms. Vaughn?
Actually, let me just reply to something Reese just said real quickly, and then I'll give my question. When I was a teacher at Estero High School, we had a particular period that we were assigned to hand out the books, and we were always asked to highlight certain aspects of that. So, and I know a lot of teachers will, and I probably was guilty of this myself, kind of gloss over some of those things, but certainly in conjunction, that would be something really important as the teachers handed out the books, that they specifically looked at some things. Anyway, I'd like to hear from both students and our staff members on this question. And students, you represent 3 different schools. Now we have a very well-developed district code of conduct. What are your concerns about the code of conduct being consistently observed in the different schools? Because I know, for instance, I've heard students complain, well, at that school, they can wear short shorts with their butts hanging out, but at our school, you have to have a ruler. I mean, and there are other things, but I think that's the one that I've heard the most complaints about. So what are your concerns about that? Because I know there are inconsistencies right now, and how important is it for the integrity of this plan for the plan to be consistently enforced in the different schools?
Well, one thing, you mentioned dress code specifically. As the chair of the Student Advisory Committee, I get a lot of complaints, especially from middle schoolers, about dress code. They'll say, I looked in the district code of conduct, it says that we can wear shorts and we don't have to wear collared shirts. But I do think one thing it's important to remember about the code of conduct is that it's a baseline overview for the district, especially with regards to dress code. So that's one of the nice things, is that it leaves room for individual schools to add to it or enforce more rules in ways that they see fit. But like with things like notifying students of their rights or the prevention center, those are things that affect the school on a district-wide scale or even a nationwide scale. Like the rights of students to be searched with reasonable suspicion is something that's nationwide. So I think a lot of our new changes are stuff that really shouldn't not be enforced at certain schools.
And I will also say that for like the students that have to go through dress code for like collared shirts and pants or certain requirements for their school, it's also done by their their parent population. Am I correct, Dr. Bohatch, where they have to go through a majority vote through their school area in order to enact those dress code policies? So it is on their school themselves to do it.
You mean uniforms?
Uniforms.
The uniform schools,
So,
but
And
our
it's also
schools are not uniform schools.
correct. It just depends on that population of those parents that believe that they should have it. So if the parents feel that they should not, then they can vote in their school to have it disbanded. That's all I can say on that. But yes, I will say there's definitely in different schools, there are definitely higher dress code standards than other schools, but also I think usually when I find a dress code problem in our school is for those that, like myself, seniors who are only there for a period to do their last economic class, and then they are gone the rest of the day, so they come in their sleepwear to school, and then they leave immediately after, if not halfway through the period, because their parents were like, well, you're good, go home. So, you know, I do find that it is a problem, and I'm one of those students that feels that you should dress up during senior year because you're about to go into the workforce and you need to act proper for that. But,
No, I didn't just hear you say that, did I? About
Yes.
the teachers saying halfway through the class, "You're good, go home"?
no, I'm talking about their parents calling them and checking them out. But it really, the dress code problem I usually see is basic, like ripped jeans and then they blow it a little bit out of proportion, saying, well, it's too high, but it's not really affecting anyone, and that's where it gets out of hand, and where those students get the most complaints from.
Yeah, and I mean, I generally do think it's generally a misconception that the district has control over the dress codes for each individual school. Like going to Fort Myers High School, we're not allowed to wear shorts, but I get students all the time telling me like, you should ask for the district to allow shorts in the code of conduct. Like that's not even something that we can do because that's a policy by our principal and our admin. So I think that there's some policies, which is the great thing about a district-wide code of conduct, that can actually be adapted to the culture of the school, and some things that should not be adapted to different school cultures, like under reasonable suspicion, if any administration, yes, has like a reason to believe that a kid might have a jewel with THC in it, then they should be searched at any school. So I do think that it is very important to ensure that those policies are enforced the same across the whole district.
So one thing that you will find in this code of conduct is, especially in the dress code policy, we have started adding our positive behaviors and things that we expect of our students that lead to long-term, and you mentioned it, long-term success in both college and career. So one of the things we have inserted in here is a link that goes to Dressing for Success. And it is aimed at the student level, especially students that are going into college and into their first level jobs. And then it has links within that page to various career fields. For example, you would not wear a three-piece suit in a factory setting, but you might be wearing a collared polo shirt or a uniform of some sort. So it talks about all of those things and then what students can do to dress for success, to get the job, to get the place in college, to really help them on the positive side of leading to a successful life.
Have you seen them in college, how they walk to class?
I have.
Anyway, all right. Dr. Brohat, do you have anything to add?
Just really
or
excited
Jesus?
about the prevention center, and I want to give the kids credit. The principals are thrilled to death, and I sit at these seats every Wednesday afternoon at the student appeals, and we've got great kids making bad decisions, and one decision can ruin an entire life. We had IB students, seniors, that I took a hit of a vape in the restroom that had THC in it, and principals want to have the ability not to make the recommendation for Success Academy. So now they have two options. We have the SAFE program. I don't know if I'll review that real quick, but 3 counseling sessions, suspension up to 5 days out. First session one-on-one, second one-on-one, third parent has to attend. So that's first option. Or the prevention center would be the second option. So like Dr. Creel said, 20 days, they're still connected to the school. It's a win. They're really excited about it, based on the last Collaborate session that we had. So it was their idea. It was in January, I believe, they talked about,
Yes.
we have a problem at our school, and it's a national problem now, vaping. It's not a Lee County problem, it's Florida. And I talked to colleagues all across the state, and, what are we going to do with this? And so, looking at success now, our numbers are up. We're up over 200 students over last year. It's really crowded, and Success was designed for long-term, serious behaviors with wraparound services. So we've got kids that made one mistake in there, and so that's it's the right thing to do at the right time. So thanks for the idea, guys.
No problem.
I'm going to give Ms. Fisher the last word on this because I know that student advisory has been her baby all along, but I do want to say a couple of things. I make my kids read the code of conduct at the beginning of each school year. It's forced family fun night with pizza. So they will be forever grateful to you that you've modernized it, so I appreciate that. I am beyond excited about the online filling out of forms for parents. I think everybody knows that's been a thorn in my side all along. And finally, to the students, I will say, Will, you see where Dr. Atkins is sitting? I think you have the capacity to sit in that seat someday. So keep your nose to the grindstone, keep working hard. Future attorney Ms. Hall, a previous board learned at FSBA training, I think last year, that the board attorney is typically the second highest paid position in a school district, and it is a very prestigious position. I don't know what your area of practice will be, but that's certainly something that I could see you doing at some point in the future. Your legal analytical mind is very sharp and very good. And Mr. President, please remember public education funding when you're up in Washington.
Well, absolutely.
The importance of local control in education when you're in Washington.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher?
So I'm really proud of you guys. You are certainly leaders. I've watched you grow over the last several years, and you have brought to us information and a perspective that we really needed. You came to us, you identified issues of concern, and you also provided us with some solutions. So I can't say enough about the work that you've done. You are peer mentors to your peers at school, and I know they appreciate that. And I think that kids are more comfortable speaking with other kids. Dr. Carlin and I, years ago, had a mediation program and a peace team at the school we worked at, and honestly, we had so little recidivism when kids were the ones who sat and did the mediations and solved the problems. So I want to thank you for your hard work and for just really sticking with us and turning our student advisory committee into a real working committee. We even have some students who are participating in DAC and finance advisory. So thank you all. I'm proud of you.
Thank you, ma'am.
You good? Other questions? All right.
Is there anything in addition you wanted to go over with regard to the adult student code of conduct?
I have Judy Johnson here with me,
Please.
and basically this is a document that is renewed annually. You will find that most every correction in here is basically around format. Judy has one element that has been changed here, so would you like to share that, please?
That one element had to do with sexual harassment. And the language originally stated that there was a repeated pattern that would lead to an action. There are some actions that are so egregious that it only takes one time, so the word repeated has been stricken. Beyond that, there really are no other substantive changes in the document.
This code of conduct, the adult code of conduct, is for our technical colleges, our 3 technical colleges, and traditionally we bring this together with our student code of conduct.
Board members, any questions or comments?
No, thank you.
It was very straightforward and easy to understand. Thank you.
Yes.
Next, we have our capital project update with Mr. Rickenbacker. Thank you, Dr. Atkins, for making sure that you bring this in front of us once a month.
You're welcome.
I'm never asking for it, I'm always getting it and realizing, okay, it was time, and here it is, so thank you.
Well, there's a lot going on, as you all are aware, so I think it's good that we're doing this with this degree of frequency.
Got a first try this time. Good afternoon, board members, Dr. Atkins, legal team, Mary. This month's capital update, several new projects coming on board. We have some of the HVAC projects that we engage with, maintenance. Mr. Flock turns over several of these projects to one of my project managers, Tina Silcox, to manage, and she's successfully been working through the programs. This is the first phase of Ida Baker High School. Right now, we are in the test and balance mode and commissioning of the first phase of the project, completing the punch list items, and it will be 100% done the phase 1, May 1st. The phase 2 has begun. We just crossed Agualinda Boulevard with our underground chiller piping that goes from the Ida Baker site over to the Gulf Middle and Elementary School site. Phase 2 cooling tower has arrived and is set in place, and the Phase 2 chillers expect to arrive on site late in June. That's another chill that will be placed inside the compound at Ida Baker to feed that additional capacity for those sites as well. You can see some of the pictures there. Middle School, construction management contract has been successfully negotiated and executed. The architectural contract, myself and procurement staff, Frederick and Tracy, we successfully negotiated a fair and reasonable deal, and we're waiting for the executed contract to come back to Dr. Atkins for signature this week. And we have all our water management permitting has been approved for that site. So basically, we will start our design meetings for that site as soon as the architect's on board, similar to what we did at MMM and Lehigh Senior High School, and get that ball rolling.
Scott, just a couple items before you go on. Back to the first one on the HVAC. Again, this is, I never thought I would be excited about an HVAC project, but this is an example of one that we are. I think the team should be complimented on what they've done to put this together, but also this is a partnership with the City of Cape Coral to allow us to do this, and so this is where working with different municipalities pays off, and to provide this centralized plant allows significant cost savings moving forward, so there's something to be celebrated. And then moving on to the next project, this East Zone Middle School MM, this is again, a project that again the team has worked really, I think, done their due diligence here and utilization of the prototypes, and I think again a lot of work goes behind this, but hats off to the efforts.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it, and we all work hard. This one here, if you folks aren't familiar, we're building the entire site out. We're developing the site. We're building the middle school for the numbers, and we're hoping to go for a spot survey for the elementary component on this, maybe July or August of this year. So we will roll right into that, assuming the numbers get approved by the state. And the big one, MMM, got some bit of good news that's not shown on the slide. We have our Army Corps permit. In addition to that, I'm bringing contracts forward for the mitigation. Now, I have to explain this, and it gets a little difficult. We have to enter into another contract for Panther mitigation credits. It's about $124,000. However, the mitigation credits, when I came to you for the 1.3, are actually reduced. And quickly, how that works is we had anticipated the worst-case scenario for wetlands. The final verdict came in less. Hence, the mitigation for wetlands was reduced, but that comes with a Panther credit component to it. So the $124,000 I have to gum is to get that little bit of Panther credit back. So instead of $1.3 million, it should be just over $900,000. So we saved approximately $400,000 coming forward. Our Southwest Florida water permit, obviously with the Army Corps, it's in conjunction, is approved. We've submitted all of our Lee County Department of Transportation and permitting for the site. We're waiting to hear back on that. Total project cost, we're scheduling, we've released, as of this past Thursday, we released the construction manager to solicit bids for the GMP. That's a 6 to 8 week process, so we're coming to you on your July 30th board meeting with a total project cost for MMM High School, and the GMP will be attached to that. And basically told them I want them mobilized within 2 weeks. So by the second week of August, I would like to see a trailer out there and dirt moving. And that puts us right on schedule to be opened up with the hard structure for August of 2021, but I believe we could probably turn it over in May. We typically go July 4th weekend plus or minus to get the principal and their staff in, at least to the front office, to get acclimated. So if I can get a month jump, which is what we've effectively done by getting the permitting in this process moving forward, they just get a little bit more benefit to actually get in there once the bell closes. Let's see, 100% construction documents, Army Corps permit has been executed. Here's another HVAC project that our staff has taken given to us by the maintenance department, and Tina is also managing this. Dunbar Community School ice tank replacement. The air handler installation has been complete. The new ice tanks are installed. Connections are in process as we speak, and the circulation pumps that run the whole system are actually in operation. So we'll be shutting that project down shortly too and completing it with punch list. Lehigh Senior renovation and addition. The precast planking and structural steel has been involved. We're starting our second layer of the block work. We are projecting, I mentioned this at the CAC, we do have it just got announced, a 4-week delay on the interior renovation. Now, I don't want you to get nervous. Don't get nervous until you see me get nervous. Right now, what had happened is there was some curriculum change in the school. When it was realized that they went to 2,500 students, they needed some additional CTE computer classes. So we were in the process of the media center where we created what we call our swing classrooms. That would be classrooms that would be finished, and when they're done, we move another wing section of the campus into those classrooms and then demo that section. They needed the additional CTE component for the additional students in that school. So February 1st, we got the directive, and I believe the principal with Dr. Creel, they decided to go ahead and put this in to accommodate that student capacity. We had to do some design work for the electric. So I have a recovery schedule that they'll be providing me tomorrow at our weekly meetings, which should show the manpower loading and so forth that we need to get back on to schedule to have it done by end of July, which is totally possible. I'm not concerned about it, and don't be concerned unless you see me concerned. So it's just a standard bump in the road. Interior finishes and 4 underway. The painting's in place. Precast plank was installed. Our site drainage is just about to complete. We have some big 54-inch site drainage piping in there, so we're hoping to have that all wrapped up before the real wet season hits us. And we're putting decorative fencing around the campus as we speak. A lot of it in the front core areas of the building is installed, and we're creating around the periphery. Any questions?
Ms. Gittens?
There was a question about the roads with MM, and the road going into MM or us.
That is correct. We have, in the purchase of the property, we have perpetual easement rights. So we will, you'll see in my total project cost, we have a build-out fee. I put a $2 million value in there. It may not cost that much, but that's my budget amount. We will have to develop that road as a private road for the district's use.
So
Ultimately, our goal is to try and get the county to take over the maintenance of that road, but those are negotiations that'll have to occur in moving forward.
And it would only be used for MM, though?
That is correct.
Is the county maybe, looking at later advancing it or taking it through?
There have been, we've had conversations. Basically, they would take it over if I continued on to a canal to another neighborhood and created a bulkhead and built that road, and that's several $100,000, $500,000 possibly or more. I did find some documentation in the sales of some of these properties in and around the area where they proposed possibly using 2020 money to support that road and that. So we're going to engage in some discussions with them, but right at this point in time, it will be a private road until we cross that bridge, for lack of a better term.
Well, you mentioned bridge, so is there the possibility eventually, you said go up to the canal?
Want to go to the canal? I only need to get to our property to provide access for buses and cars. I don't believe that I should be required to pave further down, create a culvert and pave over it at our expense.
Right, no, and I agree with that. I'm just wondering, in the discussions, are they possibly talking about eventually bridging it or something and taking it further?
They see the development in the area, and our adjacent property owners, at some point in time, someone's going to develop those with housing, and there's going to be volume, and they're going to want that. Right. So I'm hoping we could be good partners and come to some kind of amicable solution.
Okay, thank you.
Other board member questions or comments? Dr. Atkins?
Just one thing real quick. I know Scott has also been working on the South project with Dr. Creel, and we were in discussion with Florida Gulf Coast University regarding the Estero Academic Village project. So that's something that is ongoing. We'll keep you posted. Right now, it appears that we'll start with a K-8 and then eventually build that into an elementary and a middle school, separating the K-8 and splitting it into the two buildings as we need additional capacity. So the interesting thing about that particular project is we're working with Florida Gulf Coast University on an innovative design, because you have to, I think in its case, provide a little bit more flexibility in terms of the learning environment, and while taking into account the fact that you have to work with the university and then provide some additional office space, and then provide a way in which you can get professional development into that building without it interrupting the learning environment. So hopefully with the use of technology and some different innovative strategies and techniques, we'll be able to do that. So that's, I think that'll be a real interesting project moving forward.
Absolutely. Look forward to it, actually. Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Vaughn? Sorry.
I was at the construction advisory, what was that, a week ago, when you presented on this, and I know there was a discussion that came up about the design that FGCU is interested in, and the fact that they were interested in open classrooms and lots of glass and that sort of thing. And so my first question would be, in our discussions, who's paying to build that school?
Well, we as a school district are going to need the additional capacity. The way I see it is that we would be really budgeting for what we would see as a traditional prototype and then trying to work with Florida Gulf Coast University to work on anything over and above what we would pay for an additional prototype. If you watch what happens up in Tallahassee, they're usually pretty successful when it comes to major capital projects, and so I do think that we can get their help. In addition to that, when you talk about flexible space and when you're talking about some of these different instructional designs, we may need some flexibility in terms of legislative requirements where we're also going to need their help in that area as well.
Agreed.
Ms. Gittens?
That was my question.
Any other questions or comments? Do we have any questions on the change order memo that was presented to us while Mr. Rickenbarger is here? Great, I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is public comment. Are there any members of the public that would like to address the board?
There are no cards, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And next we have board member comments. I'll start with Ms. Fisher.
I have no comments right now, thank
Ms.
you.
Giovanelli.
We just attended the Learning for Life dinner last night, and that was really wonderful. The talent in this district is amazing, so that's really all I have.
Ms. Jordan.
Ditto. Ms. Giovanelli?
We had a good time.
No Ms. Gittens. Ms. Vaughn.
No comments.
I unfortunately have some. 230 days until our next legislative session. I say that to instill a sense of urgency in us. There are 94 days until the Patriots play their opening game, and I have been anticipating that since the end of last football season. So I'd like us to start to think about anticipating the next legislative session. I will probably bring that up to the point that you're all going to hate me. Committees begin in September. I really feel like we need to jump on this now so that we can be working throughout the summer before those committees even start to meet. Cypress Lake High School, I went to their spring choral concert. Y'all know I'm not an artsy kind of lady, but this was really, really, really amazing. Their traditional black dress choral people, what are they called? Choir, was very, very impressive, but oh my gosh, their a cappella group was like nothing I've ever seen. They are going to Milan, and apparently they're going to be performing throughout the county for fundraising in order to get them over there. These kids were just unbelievable. The JROTC award ceremony is one of my favorite things to do every year, and two of my favorite parts of that ceremony are Mr. Davis's generosity in providing scholarship money or award money to the school for cybersecurity, right? Is that what it's called? Yes. I think it's incredibly generous of you to engage with our students in that way. And then General Jim Dozier's award, I can't fathom what it's like to be a 17 or 18-year-old kid who receives an award from a retired Army general. I just think that that's amazing. Since our last meeting, I have attended a Florida High School Athletic Association board meeting. Chancellor Oliva is now on the FHSAA Board of Directors, and we all had a chance to meet him in Tallahassee, and he represents athletic interests just as well as he does, I think, our academic interests. I will tell you that every time I leave Gainesville, I'm just sort of refreshed There are no politics at that board table, none, absolutely none. Every single person at that table is focused on what's best for student athletes in the state of Florida, and the level of knowledge that's brought to the table by whether it's a coach or an athletic director or a principal is astounding to me. And you know, I'm a policy geek, I love the law, but they speak about policy changes from their perspective of experience in the schools with these specific things. And they're just, it's very, they impress me. I always feel good when I leave Gainesville. Coach Elmer Tremont passed away after 54 years of coaching in the district, and he wasn't just a coach. He was a coach who raised the bar for coaches in this school district, I think, not just after him, but for years to come as well. I'm very disappointed that he is not a member of the Florida High School Athletic Association Hall of Fame, and I'd like to see, you know, what needs to be done to get him there. I did attend the Hillmeyer Tremont Awards dinner last night. Really, really impressive event. Because, you know, Mr. Tremont was more than a coach. He also gave back to the community through this foundation that provides students with significant, last night 3 students received $20,000 scholarships, and providing them with educational opportunities that they would not financially have been able to manage on their own without those scholarships. So his legacy will continue to live on, not just in the bar that he set for coaching in the district, but in the individual students' lives that he touched through the foundation and scholarships, which leads me to a discussion about a district athletic director. I have received tremendous feedback from the athletic directors and the coaches across the district about Mr. LaRosa's involvement in athletics. He's essentially serving many of the functions of a district athletic director, assuming many of the responsibilities of a district athletic director, and I want to reiterate the importance of solidifying that role here in the district so that we can really maximize the benefit of athletics for our students. Do you want to say something?
Well, just that I understand that, and Dr. Pruitt and I had a conversation probably about 4 weeks ago, and I know she's in the process of developing a job description and bringing that forward.
Great. He is, he's just working so closely with our schools, and the level of respect he has on a statewide level is very impressive too. I mean, his knowledge is very deep. Tonight, we will recognize teachers, nurses, and military personnel through appreciation weeks for each. I'd like to think that I and my fellow board members show appreciation for our teachers and all that we do here, and in terms of our advocacy to try to get funding to pay them what they're worth. Our nurses, like our teachers and every other category of staff in the district, are way overworked and underpaid. The load of work they have is really unfathomable, but they care for our kids. They love our kids every single day with a high level of professionalism. We also have a significant number of retired military working for our district in the JROTC program. These are men and women who were willing to sacrifice their lives for our freedoms, and now they continue to serve our community by educating our students. And I really believe that it's our military men and women that make us the greatest nation in the world. So I'm appreciative to them, and I can't talk about willingness to sacrifice your life without talking about the fallen officer memorial service that we went to this morning. Todd Everly does an exceptional job every year of bringing us together and helping us remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice in order to protect the citizens of Southwest Florida. I am actually almost moved to tears each time I go to that ceremony, and it reminds me of the tremendous appreciation that I have for law enforcement, not just the law enforcement that sits in this room with us every other week for our meetings, but also the Cape Coral Police Department, the Fort Myers Police Department, the Sanibel Police Department, and the Lee County Sheriff's Office for the support and the protection they provide to our students and our staff in our schools every single day. But they're not just police officers in our schools. They're not just cops in our schools. You know, they showed up, a lot of them showed up on the first day of school with lunch boxes for photo opportunities because they really relate to our students. And I know, Dr. Atkins, you've said that we have tremendous positive feedback from these programs, and I'm very, very, very grateful for the partnerships that we have in that regard. And finally, tonight for pluses and deltas, I do anticipate a significant media presence at tonight's meeting. I would like to ask that we could all go immediately to pluses and deltas before interacting with members of the public or the media so that we can get that wrapped up in a timely manner. And those are my comments for tonight, or for this afternoon. Dr. Atkins, do you have any comments?
No, I think you covered most of it.
Sorry.
Golden apple, I think, I can't remember if you
I was
mentioned that or not.
I thought somebody else would cover that. That's why I didn't put it down.
Well, obviously, you know, all those things that you mentioned, but our golden apple, and so our gratitude to the foundation for continuing to do that for this district, phenomenal event. You know, the two things that really kind of choke me up are stories about teachers and kids, and then the other one you mentioned, law enforcement. Those are the two things that kind of hit you right in the gut. And when you go to the Golden Apple, you're always going to pick up, you know, at least one of those really, really touching stories, and of course, 6 remarkable individuals that were recognized. So I appreciate those efforts. It's one of the highlights of the year. So thank you.
Attorney Bierman, do you have any comments?
I don't.
Great. No items for good of the order. Meeting is adjourned.